go from there. How about that? All right. Another great topic for veteran value, impacting with interest. Um, it's one of these themes where, you're trying to leverage your military experience and make it interesting. And it's also funny because when you talk to veterans about their service, that's when they get animated. That's when they really jump in. They tell something that's super interesting. You get wrapped around it, and it's great times, especially with a cold beverage. However, when we look at the business world, and let's face it, it's not as exhilarating of a topic. Sometimes it falls short. So that's why, again, this topic comes up and is brought up to me quite a bit. I'll go through some of the items like we normally do. And I think at the end, I've had folks take away, some successful traits, attributes, and so forth just from this discussion. But what I'll say is this is an ongoing one, right? And we'll get to that. But I'm really excited about sharing this because I think a lot of folks have found benefit from it. And I know how I personally used a lot of these approaches. I've changed some of these and updated some of them because of, where we're at in the world and things continually change. But I think a lot of what you'll find is the core values and the core principles remain true today. So with that, just like we always do, we'll jump into the definition. We'll share out some of the business focus on this, right? And in some cases, people want to be interesting, but it sometimes falls short. You definitely need to be memorable, right? And I do believe that there's a right way of going about that without being either too heavy-handed or, I always like this meme, right? You don't want to be that person, and I think a lot of us learn in the military not to be that person, right? And then impress others and share it outward, get the value from it. So that being said, there is a lot of definitions out there, but I like this one from Merriam-Webster, which it really just basically states two things: holding attention and arousing interest, right? And again, I go back to it boggles my mind how much a veteran can give like a Steven Spielberg level story about their mirror career or the military career, right? You're just on the edge of your seats, explosions, face to face with the enemy, coming home. It's really like a gladiator story written all over again, right? And when you then start hearing them talk, whether or not it's about business or during business, you really kind of want to leave the room. You're like, why? I mean, it's the same person, right? So let's break that down. You know, interest is a valuable part of business. And the reason why I think that if you're interesting, people will associate value with you. And I think that that's sometimes the combination we're trying to unlock. And value can equal ideas, leadership, impacts, relationships, successes, right? And I do believe you have to be interesting. And what I've seen in some of our other veteran values is that we use the business canvas, and you see that value proposition right in the middle. And it doesn't have to be a complex again. You see the key partners and all these things that are interconnected with it. But what's that value proposition? And when you're thinking about yourself, really, I mean, when we talk about our development or positioning ourselves for promotions, it really is about your value proposition to your team, your division, to the company, to your customers, and so forth. So, when looking at this, it is important to think about, how do you drum up that interest about yourself, what you're doing, and maybe the team you're leading or a team you want to lead, right? All right. But why do we care, right? I think that for any of us, this comes to effect, right? It just becomes easier. I want to become more memorable, charismatic. But why? Because things become easier for you, right? And if you use the lazy law, right? Very high laziness doesn't correlate with a lot of interest. And yet, conversely, if folks are very interesting, I don't think you have to put in as much energy. Doesn't that seem weird, right? But we observe this on a day-to-day basis. Sometimes the most charismatic people are the folks that get things done. They're inspirational, they're motivated, right? And at the same time, you go, maybe it's just nature, or maybe it's something that they just bring to the table, or maybe it is cultivated, right? And what they get at out of it is kind of like you see the rich getting richer, right? You see celebrities going to something and they get free stuff, right? Again, you create that perpetual motion or perpetual flywheel of value. Folks want to help you at that point. Folks want to bring you on their teams. Folks want to understand more. And you actually create focus and clarity where it hasn't been before, right? So I think that's the intrinsic reason why. I mean, there's probably other reasons why you have it, or even, just personally having interest in yourself or creating that brings you, friends, experts, expertise, maybe opportunities and doors that you didn't happen to open before, right? And that's the reason why we get into why do we want it, right? Not everyone can do this. However, um, I do believe, and what I mean by that is not everyone can do this at first, right? And the reason why I say that it's very apparent when someone's interesting, um, and you can definitely see this. But when you think about it in your own mind, you're like, well, could I do that? Right? So at first, maybe you need to take a look at something, and so that's why we want to break it down. So why do you want to do this? Usually there's a value proposition out there, right? And again, we're taking a formula approach to this, right? There's gain creators, maybe products or services, and pain relievers in the world of business, right? And from a customer profile, the customer wants to gain something, or there might be jobs, or there's pain points that you want to leave, right? So there's a connector between value and what the customer perceives, right? And at its very foundation, if you can get this, then I don't think you're very far off from moving up in levels, moving up in complexity, moving up in really desired states, right? Because when you look at this, yeah, if you can leave somebody's pain with pain relievers, wow. If somebody wants to gain something, right? Growth, sales, throughput, wow, yeah, if you have an answer for that, that's it. And again, these things are of interest when you're talking about jobs or performance or so forth, right? You want to be able to articulate. So that's right there. You want to create those great value propositions. You want to gain that interest, and then you want that person to perceive how that value will be delivered, right? So that intrinsically is why we want it, right? And it's inferred power because I show you the same diagram, right? And some really smart people at Harvard basically filled in more stuff, right? And this applies to way more items, right? But it's the same concept. And remember, I showed you the basic one, and I'll go back real quick just so you can take a look at it, the contrast, right? Why do we want it? Because intrinsically we understand this. But when you talk about business, this shouldn't scare you. Eliminate a lot of the clutter, right? And again, if there's a gain that's wanted, find out what it is. If there's a product or service, find out what it is. If there's a pain that you can relieve, we'll find out what it is. And you don't have to cover the whole gamut. I mean, I would say be very surgical and focused because then again, that laziness to value matrix. I mean, you're not going to go and pound your head against the wall all day long, right? You're going to get exhausted and, to be quite honest, probably very tired. And who knows if you get it all, right? But if you invest some interest or some effort into it, I think that you could make those correlations. And again, as you're discussing or as you're going through topics, as you're having conversations and sharing this knowledge, you'll test out how to deliver, what the approach is, the content, right? And you'll also discover how succinct you have to be. I mean, folks in sales can create a lot of interest in a very short amount of time. And before, they close the deal, they usually shut up, right? You don't want to inject a whole bunch more conversation. If someone's about to say yes, let them, right? So I think we covered the why and what's important. I think the how, the approach. And you're not going to always understand the customer's perspective. And I chose this diagram. It could be a customer, it could be an audience, it could be a hiring manager, hiring exec, right? But you're trying to get from their perspective, right? Their needs and insights. And this is easily said. I mean, yeah, I can ask the question, have you found that yet? But I think it's more difficult to come up with that answer, right? But there's spots to find that because when you start thinking about what's in it for them, right? The promise of value. I look at three things in business. Can you bring them more revenue? Can increase their throughput? And can you reduce expenses? Usually those three things in business, if you can hit one, you're doing pretty darn good. So focus on one of those areas. If you can do a combination, now you're moving up into expert level. And if you can do all three, you pretty much write your own ticket. So don't think that you can just jump in there and obviously do all of them. It takes some level of commitment, skill, and obviously endurance to get through that. But then the flip side of it is I will say that a lot of you have, and I've heard stories and engaged and just discussed, you have it, right? It's just a matter of using your Eagle Group network and really having folks hone your craft. You're throwing out certain things. Does that resonate? And have some folks that be honest with you and say yes or no, or I didn't understand that, or hey, when you're really going through the customer's perspective, is that truly what they want, or is that what they said, right? How would they use that, right? And if they choose to buy from you, right? Could you explain why? Well, they're going to buy from you because you have an experience, you have 15 years experience in that, and you're ready for any of the scenarios. You're very flexible, or you just have a skill of being able to react very quickly based on you just run scenarios through your head. You did in the military, and that was the game changer for you. Or can you take something very complex and synthesize it into, a few sentences and two options that somebody can act on? I mean, that's pretty cool. And then the prove it part, it's really about trust, right? So not only are you trying to create and that value, create that interest, but when people believe in it, even the folks that you may be just running ideas past, that's a powerful thing because a lot of things aren't just signed off by one person and roles aren't necessarily just, pitched out. You usually have to network. And if a lot of folks are saying, hey, talk to this person, they really have some experience or they have some great ideas, or, they're not like everybody else. And that's maybe what we need right now. We don't need a homogeneous company of everyone just saying yes. All right. So that could be a very powerful. And even if master some of this, I believe you'll feel an immediate difference, not only in the conversations that you have, but in the elevation in which you have those conversations and you're getting positive and impactful feedback. Again, a lot of folks, when you're having a conversation with them, right, you're just kind of throwing back and forth ideas. I mean, like, great, I think you're ready. Well, that's not very helpful, right? But if you get to the level where like, yeah, just give the pitch of one and the first item and the third item, the second item I don't think will hit. Well, now that's refinement, right? And people are attracted and want to learn more from that person, right? And again, if you're doing that, it gives them a chance to as well. So it's very reciprocal. All right, action items. And here's, a list that kind of put together. Some folks have shared about this experience with me. So, again, my goal here is that you have some takeaways. And I'll go through some of these pretty darn quickly, the ones I like, and then you can obviously infer the rest. But stop doing uninteresting things. And the number one here is don't talk about the weather. I mean, I love the commercials out there where people are turning into their parents. Yeah, unless there's going to be a tornado or weather warning, weather is not really an icebreaker. An icebreaker is, hey, so what do you think about that turn of events in the market today? Right? Something that's going to lead you into an interesting conversation. And here's what I'll say: hip pocket little tool or life hack. You have a device, a mobile phone that gives you the latest and greatest information. You could read three paragraphs, form an opinion about something, and use it as a talking point. The investment, again, that lazy value chart, right? The kind of the difference is now you have something interesting that's not the weather, and it may have impactful inferences in future conversations or things and strategy meetings that you may get pulled into. So, you know, that kind of leads into this, stop asking about uninteresting things. I mean, stop it. The best way to say it is just stop it. And if you're not very interested, don't waste time, because time is one of those valuable things you just never get back, right? Consume interesting things. I think we hit on that a little bit. Um, oh, ask people if you don't even know, and this is sometimes funny, but with AI, machine learning, hey, where are you getting your information from? Are you having to subscribe to it? Where are you getting it for free? How you doing some of this stuff, right? You're finding out, people's approaches, but you may gain access because a lot of people love to share that. And if you don't ask them the question, you'll never get access. But that's where, and then, hanging out with interesting people. The best way to be boring is just hang out with boring people and everyone's looking at each other, right? And then become the sum of your parts, right? But interesting people, you probably aren't looking at them right now. You got to go find them. And that's part of the adventure as well. And the other thing too is when we're talking about that effort, if you have a group that's continually sharing ideas or what they've read, it almost is like a news update, but you're actually interacting not with your mobile phone, but with people, and you're getting different philosophies, you're getting different approaches that an article won't have. And that could be very impactful because some folks even translate that are working in your business. Like IT and dev will translate things. Hey, I read this thing, but this is how I take it. It could be right, it could be wrong, but you get that insight that you wouldn't normally have, right? And when you're networking with folks inside a company, you're trying to get in or you're trying to move up, those are also very interesting things because you could be pulling up a perception in an interview and an end year review, something that really sparks that, and you might be asked upon, hey, what do you think? Right? And you're already prepared for your response. You're likely already prepared for how would you attack that problem and add value to the company, right? Because you've already been essentially rehearsing it, conversing, but you've also been probably been thinking about it, right? Um, I don't know about the necessarily signature quirk, but some people have these intentionally, right? And they'll have momentary pauses, long pauses, right? Or, they'll always have like some weird end line, like, hey, go get your veteran value or something like that. Hey, you guys can make fun of me on that, right? But have a signature quirk and that you know of, or you just no Midwest long goodbyes. You say goodbye and you walk away, right? So those things, an interesting hobby. And again, I think that's just to get the mental gymnastics through. Positive interrogation. So if you don't know, or if you don't find something out interesting about that person, then you probably left an opportunity of building a relationship because people love to share, especially if it's something that's unique about them. And then conversely, you'll find something unique about yourself, or you'll at least know how to frame it up because you've listened to other people do it, right? Show, don't tell. Again, that's elevating your style game. If you want to be interesting, again, I'm not saying that you need to go drastically outside your comfort zone, but folks will tell you kind of where you lie. If you ask them questions and you're not going to get hurt by their responses, people will usually be pretty truthful and pretty succinct, right? And again, you're establishing your authenticity and not going necessarily away from that, right? And the reason why I say that is as you're going through this journey to become more interesting, it's not about doing everything, right? Yeah, there's a lot of things here, but you'll probably take one or two. Great. That's where you want to start, right? And even for folks that are interesting, I can tell you for a fact they work on this because, again, the value that they get from conversations. And a lot of these, like the interrogation one, I love because you all can always walk away from an engagement with new information, new perceptions, even new ways of getting to resources that you didn't know before, and that will improve just your perception and access to things in life. So, and I think you can come up with a lot more. So I'll leave that list with you to, converse with other folks. And I think even going through the list sometimes is helpful. So with that being said, in closing, I know I won't go back to the slide. In closing, I hope this shows you how to generate interest. Again, there's a lot more things here. I don't think you should ever be overbearing in this. I mean, in fact, I think when I find interesting folks, they're the ones that usually are asking good questions and then filling in the blanks with some things that they've come up with, right? And they just keep the conversation going. So, as always, We'll keep the discussion topics coming. We'll try to get the veteran value out there in ways that you're able to take away and have stuff in your hip pocket. And we'll continue to solicit your guys' feedback and new topics here at Eagle Group. Thank you.